For those of you who don't know, my name is Jeff Turcott,
I'm Kelly Kurtz.
and our business is Simply Well Seniors, and this seminar series that we've been putting together is the Aging Well Seminar Series, and we kind of play off the word well a lot with our business and the way we want people to recognize us. So today's topic is estate planning, trust wills, guardianships, and we have a great panel set up for you this morning. Some folks that are trusted advisors of ours, and we're happy to refer them as people need some of their services. So, as I mentioned, this is the Aging Well Seminar Series presented by Simply Well Seniors, Kelly and I. We are realtors, but we're different, and here's why. We help our seniors navigate the journey to the next place they call home, from clean out to the closing table. Some of the projects that we're working on now, since we last saw you, was a project at Lunenburg, rehoming of a lot of family possessions, getting the house prepared for listing coming up in the next week or so. And it's been a lot of sorting and finding places, people and donations, people that can use the things that were left. Awful lot of dust, but we're getting through it. The next couple of weeks there'll be some landscaping being done. So it's really a cute home. So
Yeah, we worked with estate sale folks to get estate sale done, donations, all of that. So we try to rehome things to the organizations where people are most passionate about. In this case, it was for veterans or for battered women type of shelters. So we're trying to gear the donations from this house specifically to those things. So we always try to keep that in mind as we're downsizing folks to help make their donations meaningful to them.
And meeting with another client that is living in a condo that's 2 floors up and down, and actually a finished basement, so really 3 floors. He's looking for something that's really on 1 floor and moving on from the condo. So he seems to think he has a lot of stuff, but there's not a lot of
One
stuff.
thing that he doesn't have is a will, and he has nothing planned. He proceeded to tell Jeff and I his entire funeral arrangements and plan and his wishes on Monday evening, and we said, you need to come to this seminar. He said, I'm ready, but I'm not ready yet. But it's alarming to us in a lot of ways that folks at any age, but especially in their mid to late 80s, don't have anything on paper anywhere. And we said to him, if you were to pass between now and the time we meet with you in a couple weeks, what are your wishes? And that's when he told us everything he had in his mind, but nothing's on paper. So we're hoping today's seminar really gives people better perspective on planning and preparing ahead, because the bottom line is all of us are going to pass away, whether it's 3 years from now, 20 years from now, or unfortunately before then or later than then, but it's all going to happen. So being prepared gives everybody peace of mind and honors the wishes that you have for yourself.
Some of the other services that this gentleman is going to be needing is help with setting up his Xfinity in his new place when he goes there. Mm-hmm. And we all know how that goes.
Right. And that's what he's worried about is his cable, but he's not worried about his end-of-life plans. And so that's why we're trying to educate people as we go that the cable's important, but it's not as important as having a will, so that people know what to do with the things that you have left, or the money, or things that you want to give to someone. They need to know where that's going.
Right.
So
we'll get started. We have a great panel. We have a CPA, we have an estate planning attorney, and we have a certified financial planner for you. So as I introduce these folks, please give them a big round of applause in no particular order. First up is Casey Freeman of Merrill, of Bank of America Company. Casey, come on up. I picked your walk-up song. There is a walk-up song. if I there you go. And next up we have Jim Miller from the law offices of James A. Miller in Worcester. Jim, come on up.
Oh, that's a good part. I'm much better looking.
Jim actually told me he wanted Uptown Funk, but. And last but not least, we have Ron Ledger of Ledger CPA. I gotta tell you, when I invited you, that was the song I had in mind, and I created the whole thing around that.
Jim's song.
Well, next time we can do that. So we'll see where this goes. There's too many questions. We'll see where this goes, and then we can kind of go down the path that it takes us, and if people have questions, we can do that as well. So let's just start right at the top. The first question I had was, what are the most common misperceptions or overlooked aspects about estate planning that seniors, should be made aware of? And Jim, I think I'll start with you in the middle. Maybe.
All right, so first of all, how many of you are going to die? How many of you are going to go into a nursing home before you die? Right? I see a lot of people shaking their heads, no, my kids are going to take care of me, all that sort of stuff. I can tell you roughly 50% of you are going to wind up in a nursing home. I just don't know which 50% it's going to be. You all look pretty good to me. Except you, sir, I'm a little concerned. But an estate plan takes care of you when you die. But also built into that estate plan should be protection of your assets in case you wind up in a nursing home. And I think that's the most overlooked part. Everybody says, I have a will, or I have a durable power of attorney, but they're not prepared in case they go into a nursing home. So dying is easy. People have been doing it since the dawn of time. You don't need any practice. But going into a nursing home ill-prepared, it's about $18,000 a month. So you got to take some precautions.
Casey, you want to add into that any misconceptions that when you're helping folks kind of put things together?
I'd say for us, the people come to us and say, I have a trust, I'm all set, or I have a will, I'm all set, but they never actually changed anything to have the trust own it. Mm-hmm. So they have a trust, but it doesn't own their accounts. Mm-hmm. So they think they're done, but they never took the steps and funded them. So I'd say that's the number one thing that we see. Mm-hmm. That they went to someone like Jim, but then never actually completed the process of bank accounts, investment accounts, retirement accounts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are important. Ron, what do you see in this topic about misconceptions?
I think the big thing I see is they haven't communicated with their kids. Their kids have no idea where anything is. So it's kind of this thing where I think it's kind of a tough topic, so they avoid it. But you should talk to your kids about it. Let them know what's in your will. Let them know what your wishes are. Let them know where your will is, because if something happens, they're going to need to know. Mm-hmm. The other misconception, Jim will probably like this, is they think that some of my clients are like, well, I'll just have my attorney be the trustee. Right. Right. So that's not the attorney's job, in my mind. Jim can, agree or disagree.
Oh, no, I agree.
Right. So Jim would be helping the trustee, right? Mm-hmm. The trustee would go, if he was Jim, the trustee would work with Jim to get your estate squared away. Mm-hmm. So Jim doesn't want to be the trustee because in fact, he would probably say, no, that's not going to work. So then you've got to find someone that's going to work well in that situation, whether it's one of your kids, whether it's a relative, but it probably should be someone that's a bit younger than you too. You got to think about that. If it's your older brother or sister, is that going to make sense? Then you got to change things. So that's what I got to say about that.
Yeah, thanks. And we did a seminar earlier this year about speaking to your adult children about these kinds of topics. You can find that. We've recorded that as well. So, and we're actually going to be presenting that again later this year in Groton. So we'll keep you up to date on when that's going to happen. So Ron, while you have the mic, let's talk a little bit about what mature homeowners should know when creating these estate plans and capital gains and with the sale of a home and how is that treated in the tax world?
Well, the home is one of the best assets right now, tax-wise. Because if you're married, you could exclude $500,000 worth of gain. You don't need to buy another house. If you're single, it's $250,000 a gain. That's excluded. That's the gain, not the selling price. So it's a tremendous tax-free asset. So keep that in mind. The old rules where you need to roll over into another house, those have long been gone. That was just very complex and hard to track. Second thing is, if you put your house into a trust to protect it from a nursing home, realize that if you take it out, it's not going to create a good tax scenario. My aunt right now put her house in, what kind of trust did you tell me? She put it into a life estate, her house. It's probably been in 10 or 15 years. She's in a nursing home now. I'm not her trustee. Her son-in-law is. I don't know why they decided to do this, but they've decided to sell the house. So now the kids, the 3 children, have a fairly significant tax problem because they have a capital gain on the sale, from the sale of the house. She will only get, the way it works, because of the number of years it's been in this life estate, she'll only get about 15% of the proceeds from the house. So that means 15% of the proceeds will go to the nursing home, and then 85% will go to the 3 kids. So if they had waited, which would have been smarter, the kids will get the house, will get what's called a step up in basis to the fair market value of the house, and assuming they sell it quickly, there's no gain because you're selling it at fair market value. So all this planning she did years ago, I don't know whose idea it was to sell it. Maybe they just decided it would be easier, but I just don't think that was a good idea, but I wasn't involved in that.
Jim, you want to talk a little bit more about that and kind of how that could have been avoided, or?
We don't do life estates.
Okay.
And we don't do them for that reason. For that reason, and back in the 90s when Romney was governor, he outlawed life estates. A couple of years after that, the legislature passed it again. But life estates are tremendously tax complex, and almost no one understands them. Not CPAs. I mean,
Including CPAs,
the people that do them. The people that do them don't understand them. So they, Auntie has to go into a nursing home. Let's sell the house. What do you mean we have to pay 15% to the nursing home? It's been in a life estate. So I always tell people, and this is good advice whether you have a trust, a will, durable power of attorney, before you go to sell your home, before you sign on a dotted line with a real estate agent, and real estate agents are very nice people, check with your tax advisor, check with your attorney, check with your financial planner, check with all of them. It's a phone call away. Believe me, it can alleviate a lot of pain. And if we have time, I'll tell you a war story that just happened to me yesterday.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I appreciate you talking about basis, capital gains, and maybe that gets a little into the weeds, but it's certainly consideration when you have a home in an estate. What is going to be when the home sells, and what the decision is when it's going to sell, and who's going to own the home. All that needs to be discussed, considered. So let's move on to a different topic, if you don't mind. You want to say anything about home? Casey, I'll give you the opportunity.
They're the most qualified.
Okay. Casey, I wanted to ask a little bit about when you're sitting with a client and talking about their assets and their the money that they've accumulated or that they're saving and making plans. How does life insurance kind of play into this?
So we tend to use life insurance as a portion of an estate plan to necessarily look to pay taxes down the road. We've run into some scenarios where people have had a Cape House or classic cars or coin collection, and the children, based on the estate tax threshold, the children had to sell something in order to pay the estate taxes that they didn't really want to sell because they couldn't come up with the money anywhere else. So we try to use life insurance to substitute that so that the life insurance can pay out to the beneficiaries tax-free, and they don't have to sell that house down in Rhode Island. That was meant for the family, but because of the estate tax need, they have to actually do something to free up that capital. We also use life insurance too, where if someone's trying to earmark a certain amount for their children, I want to make sure that my grandchildren or children get this amount of money down the road. You can earmark that amount for a legacy, and then that frees up any other things you have to spend. So you know that you put that aside, you have a policy, you could have it on both people so that when you pass away, both of you, it goes to the children. But you know that they're taken care of so that you can spend, you can do your trips, you can go any of the places you want to go and spend freely knowing that you've already done that. Because of that tax-free piece.
Ron, I'll ask you a little bit more about the estate tax limits and how that.
So Massachusetts in the fall finally increased the estate tax limit to $2 million from $1 million. It was $1 million, it's $2 million. The federal limit, Jim, you can help me on that. This is what you do every day. All right, so 13.7 federally. I never remember those numbers off the top of my head. 2 million is easy to remember. It's a nice round number. So, that's a fair amount of money. There's some planning you can do if your estates are larger than that. Some of my wealthier clients have, when it was 1 million, when the estate limit was 1 million in Mass, basically stripped $1 million out and put it into a special type of trust. And that was basically out of the estate, did that, a number of years ago. So maybe that's now worth 2, 3, 4 million. I'm guessing that's the type of stuff you get involved with as well, or, okay. So there's things you can do to avoid a large estate bill. And you should start to think about it sooner rather than later. And talk to a good estate planning attorney about it, or your CPA if you have one. And just be smart. You don't want your heirs to have a big tax problem because you didn't plan properly.
Right. So Jim, I'll ask you, how this, comprehensive estate plan, talking about what the wishes are, and also, talking about where the assets are, what are the assets, how can that help, a married couple, protect those assets
So a couple things. First of all, married couples, if you use a trust, can exempt from estate tax $4 million, not $2 million. Single people only $2 million. You use a trust, we can exempt $4 million. But as far as protecting and safeguarding assets go, we have to be very, very careful. We like irrevocable trusts. Don't let the word irrevocable scare you. Irrevocable for street normal people means you can't change it. If you look up in the dictionary, it'd say you can't change it. But when you're a lawyer, we parse words. Irrevocable means you cannot revoke it. You can change it, you can modify it, you can't revoke it. You can actually get the money back if you need to. You lose the protection, but if you need the money, you can get it back. But the easiest, simplest way we tell people is, if your biggest asset's usually your house, although now IRAs are starting to eclipse that. Put your house in an irrevocable trust. If you can afford to have some money put into an irrevocable trust, put it into an irrevocable trust. After 5 years, the Commonwealth can't even question you about it. So it's safe. Keep the money aside that you need. And if you happen to be well enough off where you don't need to worry about nursing homes, you can bring the nursing home to you. You can start gifting to your children and making gifts to your children during life, non-reportable, $18,000 or less per person. So it's a very, very easy thing for me to tell people. It's a very difficult thing to get seniors to do. And I know because I'm rapidly becoming a senior myself. So it's very difficult to get people that have saved all their lives, that are now 70, 75, 80 years old, and say, now you have to start gifting away some of your money, because they don't think they have money. They worked all their lives. They saved everything. They still remember when they were struggling to put food on the table. So, very simple to do. You just have to take the step to do it.
Casey, I'll ask you to kind of jump in on that as well about, being prepared and saving in a way and investing in a way that is going to provide, the income, for the remainder of someone's life. I'd like to retire tomorrow. I think I have a few more years to go. The song that I played for you, if I had $1 million, I'd be halfway there. But so to talk a little bit about that planning.
So for us, with our team, it's myself, my wife, and another female advisor on our team. We tend to sit down with each family to determine what exists already and what they're working with from, say, a ball of clay, and then seeing what the goal is that they're going to need as life goes on. Many people say, I want to help my grandchild with education. I want to have some anniversary trip. We want to be able to support this cause, some charitable giving, etc. as time goes on. So we tend to build out goals so that we can do more of a bucket strategy to plan for each one, and then see what you're dealing with from an income standpoint, like Social Security, pension, what's going to be coming in. And then you have to also look at what if something changes. You could do all this planning with your husband or wife, etc., just on your own, but then what if that doesn't work out the way you planned it, because you might have a stroke, or you all of a sudden you had a fall and you have a medical issue that you have to deal with, or you get remarried. There's a lot of different things that can happen. It's not always negative. There can be positives. There could be more grandchildren. So we try to look at all these different what-if scenarios so that you can see if this happens, this happens, this happens. But really, everyone's case sensitive. So someone might come to us that has $1 million in retirement. That's a lot different planning than if they have $1 million in the bank. Okay, because of tax implications. At a certain age, you have to take from your retirement account. There's going to be the income tax needed. Where if it's in the bank, that's a whole different story. You can plan differently. You can invest differently. We don't have our own products at Merrill, so we can offer annuities, stocks, bonds, you name it. So we don't have our own proprietary. But I'd say the number one thing is to sit down with someone, whoever it is, and then make sure that they understand what's going to be going out as your life goes on, for bills and for anything you want to support, and then what you have coming in, and that builds that income plan. A lot of times people have a gap, so how can they use their accounts to substitute that missing piece? Okay, so that's really our main job, is to then make sure you also don't outlive what you've built, right? So longevity risk, let's face it, everyone is relatively healthy these days, and medical technology is getting better and better, so it's no longer people passing away so early, and so I don't need to worry about having money in my 90s. It's becoming a lot more common that you need to think about longevity. Never mind the nursing home side, but just in general, being a married couple or a single person, medical technology is keeping you living longer and longer.
So you're finding you're planning for folks into their 90s.
We run our plan stage 100.
Okay.
That's our go-to, is 100 years old, because worst case, you've over-planned. That's the thing. If I run to your life expectancy of 87 and you live to 94, well, that's poor planning.
Yeah.
So we trying to overdo it so that if you know that at least you've taken the steps for a very long life, versus just looking at what the government says you might be living to. And who knows in 20 years what hospitals can do, what sort of cures could come out that don't exist now. So
Right.
you have to kind of plan for longer down the road, in our opinion.
Yeah, that's I find that really interesting that now you're planning to 100. That's, I mean, 20 years ago you wouldn't have. But all right, while you have the mic, Casey, I wanted to ask a little bit about and we touched a little bit about gifting of assets. So talking about gifting of assets, what's the advantage of doing it during the lifetime as opposed to, upon, when I'm gone, this is where I want it to go? Let's talk a little bit. I think all three of you could probably weigh in a little bit about how that looks.
So the emotional side of gifting early is that you can see someone enjoy what you've given them. So a personal story is my grandmother was moving in with my aunt a number of years ago. She sold her house. She gifted us a sum, and we were able to purchase a pool. And my kids are 7 and 4. My grandmother's able to watch them swim in the pool and enjoy themselves and come over and just see it occurring, versus if that money came in when she passed away, she wouldn't have seen any of that. So there's the emotional side of it that we encourage, because you can help with tuition instead of someone having student loans. There's that's one gifting. But at the same time, if someone's in need, you get to actually experience them, not say, you can help see them actually receiving the gift and benefiting from it during your life. From a financial standpoint, naturally, like they've commented, getting the money out of your estate helps you for a lot of the other things down the road when it comes to nursing home, taxes, etc. But most of the people we deal with, we focus more on the emotional side of it, because we work with the CPA and the attorney to talk about the financial side, but we have a lot of folks that just, what can I do to help family? What can I do instead of just when I'm gone, right? So I'd say the gifting piece emotionally is probably pretty important.
Ron, you have anything to add to that? How's that affect?
No, I would say if you're going to do gifting, just let go of any preconditions as to how they're going to spend the money, right? Because then you gift them some money and they go out and go, right, get a tattoo, buy an expensive car, like something you wouldn't do. So I think that's the hardest part. As I listen to my clients and, they talk about gifting, I think that's the hardest part they struggle with. And I say to them, you got to be prepared to, not pass judgment on what they do with your money, because it really is your money. You're gifting them. But I think, to your point, that's an awesome point to make, which is that, you get to see them enjoy it.
Right. Jim, how about weighing in on this and having a plan and putting that in writing as well? Is that part of this?
Well, yeah, if you're fortunate enough to be able to gift, we always recommend a plan. We always recommend a schedule. We always recommend a table.
Okay.
So you can keep track, because believe it or not, after you're gone, sometimes families, and it's going to sound difficult, but sometimes families argue about money.
What?
So if
Really?
you write it down,
Shocking.
if you have a plan, if you keep a ledger, they're still going to argue, but at least they've got proof in front of them. Real quick, I represented a fund manager at Fidelity. He passed away. His wife was a dean at Wellesley College, 3 daughters. One was very, very well off. One was a school teacher. One was an artist. She wanted to leave most of her money to her artist daughter. I said, talk to your 3 children. Before you do this, just talk to them. Oh, the other 2 won't mind. So she had a family meeting, and she called me up like a week later and said, the one who's very well off, we had a meeting. She called me up at 11 o'clock at night crying, saying, Mom, if you left more money to her, I would think that you loved her more than you loved me. I don't know why I feel like this, Mom. I don't need the money, but you wanted truthful feelings. So keep a ledger. Make everything known. Don't try to hide something from your kids, because they're going to find out. So that would be my advice.
Yeah. Well, good. Let's switch gears a little bit. Talk a little bit about long-term care, long-term planning, long-term insurance, those kinds of things. And I'll start with Casey, if you have any advice or thoughts about long-term care and long-term care insurance, and certainly part of the planning, when you're planning for income and planning for for care, that's part of the package.
You can look at long-term care as also an option versus life insurance. He pulled out the statistic about borderline half the people in this room might need it down the road. That could increase naturally with longevity. So as people are able to stay living for longer, they might need care. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to a nursing home. Just means you could have someone at the house. It could be home health aides, etc. Long-term care insurance typically is something that's built to pay expenses to a certain amount. Depends on how much you put in. The old way was more like car insurance. So you paid into these policies and you hoped you didn't get sick, but just like you don't want to get in an accident, but there's no value until you do. So that was the old way, and that made it a really challenging to actually plan for it, because people were just putting money out the door to someone like Genworth, but then unless something happened, they realized nothing back. So that discouraged a lot of folks, or they could potentially raise the cost of it too as time went on. That shifted to newer policies from different companies where you tend to give them the money, they hold it, they give some sort of leverage that if you do need care, they'll pay this much back. But if you pass away and never need it, your beneficiaries get something. So that's kind of the evolution that's taken place, which is a lot easier to part with the money, right? So we've looked at it where someone has a CD in the bank, they're leaving it for their kids, maybe it's $50,000, they don't really need it, they can move it into something like that. If they pass, it still goes to the kids, but if they do need care down the road, at least now they've bought into something that might give them $150,000 of long-term care. I'd say the number one thing to look at if you ever pursue a policy is if it's reimbursement versus indemnity.
Okay.
So indemnity tends to be if you have something happen, you check the boxes that you need care, they send you the check. That's it. Like you qualify, they send you the check. Reimbursement sounds like it is. You need care, you have to show the receipts, and then they pay you back. So indemnity is definitely the preferred method, because as long as you qualify, you get your $4,000, whatever it is, monthly. You don't have to prove that you paid it to this person or the aide that came over during the day, etc. So it's number one consideration if you ever pursue a policy is how that is. And plus, if there's some sort of increase built in. You might buy this when you're younger, but you might not need it for 20 years. You want to make sure that it has some sort of inflation protection in it, so that when you do need it, it isn't just that $150 that you started with, because care, like he said, was $18,000 a month potentially. Not too long ago, that was $12,000. Not too long ago before that, it was $6,000.
Yeah.
It's becoming a big business in that healthcare scenario. So down the road, it's only going to cost more. So making sure a policy has some sort of protection built in where the benefits increase.
Good. Jim, you want to add any to that?
So I love the insurance policy type where if you don't use it, you don't lose it. And they usually give you around 3 or 4% interest. However, if you're 65 years old and come into the office and say, we're thinking about buying long-term care, your time has passed. The premiums skyrocket between 60 and 65. Most people don't want to buy long-term care insurance. I don't blame them. It's expensive. The younger you are, the cheaper it is. But think of it this way. If you own a house, you have house insurance. You hope your house never burns down. But if it does, you can't afford to buy the house that you're living in now. So if you're younger, consider it. But I like the type of life insurance policy that he says, if you don't use it, you don't lose it. And it has a long-term care rider. You can usually buy it in $50,000 increments, $100,000 increments. You can check with him about that. Much, much better than the one. By the way, there were 300 long-term care insurance carriers in the United States. Guess how many there are now? Anybody want to take a guess?
35.
10. Went from 300 down to 10. And that's because they priced it wrong in the beginning, and now I have people that were with Genworth. They're getting letters saying 40% increase in your premiums. You can't afford it now. You bought it when you were 50.
Yeah.
Now you're 68, 70, you're retired, you're in fixed income, and they're raising your premium 40%. a single premium life insurance policy is the way to go, in my opinion.
Let's let me bring one of the mics over to you, Michelle. Then Jim can grab the mic from.
Just piggybacking on what you said, when do you think is a good age to purchase long-term care insurance? You just mentioned 50 versus 68.
Well, I think you might know better than me, but I like 50-ish. The younger the better, but 50-ish is when people start to think about it.
I like how you said 50 is young.
50 is young.
Really, you can start at any age to a degree, but you can still get quotes in your 60s, but the leverage is going to change because, of course, the older you get, each year it's going to change. So you should still explore it. You just might not like the leverage that you get at 65 versus 60 versus 55, but it doesn't hurt to explore it. But a fair amount of the people that I've brought it to at 50 are like, no, I can't think of that. I can't think about that right now. Like, well, this is the best time to think about it because it's going to be the easiest to do.
Right.
Versus 62 years old, 63 years old, where all of a sudden there's been an event, something's happened where now there's a condition. Number one thing they shoot down policies for is someone has a cane. Not anything major, but Lincoln is one company we use. On that pre-qualification sheet, do they have a cane? If so, automatic decline. So
Wow.
it's just
Yeah.
little things that it doesn't sound like a big deal, but there's little things like that necessarily in your 50s you don't have to think about, or in your 70s you might. So it's going to continue to change.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing. I think I agree with both of their approach. Right now, there's some great products out there that are hybrids, meaning they're life insurance and they're long-term care. Because I think many of us are not sure, are we going to need it? And so having that type of policy and having it be an indemnity policy, that's a great way to go as well, because no one's going to want to submit reimbursements. Who's going to do that? Your kids don't want to do that. They really don't. It's a lot of work. So just getting a check once you qualify for, some reimbursement, that's the way to go, in my opinion. So I agree with these two gentlemen. That's the right approach.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for the question, Michelle. So talking a little bit more about, Jim, you mentioned, different types of trusts, irrevocable, irrevocable, living trusts, that kind of thing. So the question I have is where, and you did talk a little bit about how you approach this in an irrevocable trust with folks that you get this planning for. And I was wondering if you could help expand on that, how this helps asset protection and folks.
Anybody out there have an irrevocable trust? Wow. Okay. That can be, all testamentary trusts are irrevocable because you're gone, so you're the only one.
When you talk about funding the trust or somebody did.
Right.
It's only something about the house at this point because we would have to change our designation.
Right.
Various
So
investments.
testamentary trusts are a little bit different than what I'm talking about now. If you have any appreciable assets, if you own a home, you got to take steps to protect the home because the state doesn't care that you wanted to pass that home down to your kids.
So
The
when you
state-
say to protect the home from what?
So if you go into a nursing home,
Okay.
it's going to be about $18,000 a month. And I don't know about you sitting out there, but me sitting right here, $18,000 a month is a lot of money. And if you had a house that you paid $300,000 for that's now worth $600,000, that can go and be gone in 4 years. Now, the average person lives 2.4 to 2.6 in a nursing home, but Alzheimer's is starting to skew that statistic. I had a client who lived for 13 years at St. Pat's in Framingham. So we have to be very, very careful. So there's a couple things that people need. If you have a home, you really need to consider an irrevocable trust. If you have assets and you want to avoid probate, you need a revocable trust with an irrevocable trust. And then you can talk to your financial planner, accountant, attorney about what should go where. What money that you want to pass down to your kids that you're not going to need, I love life insurance. Life insurance goes into an irrevocable trust after 5 years. They can't touch it. It passes down to your children. It's a great way to leverage the dollar. Other than that, I don't do life estates. I do recommend gifting to children. $18,000 or below, you don't even have to report it. By the way, do you all know Massachusetts does not have a gift tax?
Okay.
You can gift anything in Massachusetts. You
Okay.
can win the lottery and gift it to your kids. But you want to make sure that if you're gifting money to your children, it's not money that you need back or that you may need back. Because everybody says, oh, Dad, I'll keep this for you. If you ever need it, let me know. And then that child gets divorced. The next thing to know, the money you gave him or her is cut in half. So you have to be very, very careful. I like using irrevocable trusts to put the money in. We call it a gifting trust. Put the money in it. You don't have to worry about divorces. We can still control it. We can still make sure that if a child gets divorced, you can eliminate them as a beneficiary so the money doesn't go to a future ex-spouse. So there's lots of ways to go about doing it. The most important thing is to write down what you have. Most of you, when you write down what you have, are shocked that you own as much as you do because you've been working all your life. Write down what you have and then take it to someone, a financial planner, CPA attorney, and say, look, what do I do? How do I begin this process? The biggest step is getting you to begin. Once you begin the process, you get used to it. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Ron, you want to add anything to that? I have another question for you after. If you,
That was well said. I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay.
Just remember that annual gifting, it's an annual gifting. It's not a one-time, the 18,000. And so sometimes I'll get those calls in the fall and I'll say to my client, all right, give 18,000 in December and give 18,000 January 2nd. And then basically you've given them double that and you've got 2 years covered and then we don't need to think about it for a while. But a good gifting plan is to do what Jim was talking about here, which is to create a plan for it and track it. So.
Good. Excellent. Let me give you the mic so we can. You.
When you're saying about the 18, am I doing this
Yes,
right?
right.
Okay. I did something recently and nobody could hear me and I'm talking away. So with the 18,000, you're saying the gift, all right? If somebody is not in a nursing home, but could end up in a nursing home within the 5 years, is that going to be a ding if you have to apply for Medicaid? Because I'm thinking it will be because it's a look back.
Yeah, so the question really, I believe, is what happens if you give anything away and then within 5 years wind up needing nursing home care?
Right.
Massachusetts goes back 5 years. So that's why I say if you give money to a child outright, don't expect to get it back.
Oh, no, I
So,
understand.
so we put it in either a gifting trust or an irrevocable trust for the home, but we always include a trap door. So if something happens within the 5 year period, we can get it back. Now there are other things that we can do depending upon when you go in. If you go in 4 years and 6 months and you put your house into an irrevocable trust, we sit the children down and we say, okay, look, there's 4 of you. We need to come up with $100,000 between the 4 of you. And of course everybody says no. So then we say, all we're going to do then is I include a trap door in the trust. We're going to take the house out of trust, sell the house, and pay for mom in the nursing home. You just lost $500,000. You would be surprised at how quickly the home equity checkbooks come flying out of their pockets. So there are things you can do. Did I answer your question?
Well, yes and no, because I understand what you're saying, but my question truly is, forget about all the other protections. Forget about everything else. I'm just saying if nothing is in nothing, we're saying there's no tax problem with giving away $18,000. I was just trying to see if it's still an issue if something unforeseen happens and you had given away the $18,000 within a time period. Now all of a sudden, bang, you're in the nursing home, your money's gone in 2 years, you haven't made the 5 year look back. Are they looking through your records going, what's with the 18 grand?
The answer is yes, they are.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
You should let your kids know.
Just give it away.
Your kids should understand that.
yeah. Bonnie,
That it potentially could be clawed back by the state.
yeah. Bonnie, I'll get to your question, but.
Okay. I have a sticky real life question that's in the moment, and it's kind of related to Kim's question. I have a woman that I'm looking at. She has 3 attorneys, a trust attorney, a guardian, and a Rogers. None are family. She wasn't. It gets better. So she definitely requires long-term care. The trust attorney is telling me he refuses to have her pay privately for her long-term care because she is one of many beneficiaries. Many of those other beneficiaries are charities. And he feels the regular guardian should be doing all the mass health application. And I'm saying, but there's money. So how does that play out? This is real. Like, I don't
No, first of all, I'm more than happy to discuss it with you afterwards. But that's a very, very tricky situation. They never should have had 3 totally different people.
Strangers who don't know each other.
Right. If there's money and the attorney hasn't protected it, the trust attorney, then they have a fiduciary obligation to turn it over if the guardian asks for it. But
Would the state want it?
well, yeah, the guardian has to pay the nursing home.
Right, somebody's gonna pay.
Yeah. So
So she's not eligible for mass health.
well, I'm only going by what you say, and I have to give you the disclaimer. I don't know exactly what you're talking about. I'm more than happy to talk to you afterwards and get some more particulars on it.
I think the point that Jim trying to make, I think, is that when planning, it's important to have the right folks.
Yeah, a judge
think
never should have let
together.
that happen. He shouldn't have had 3
I've never
separate.
seen 3
Yeah.
lawyers.
Yeah.
First of all, lawyers shouldn't be serving as Rogers guardians. I think there's an ethical issue there. Guardians, yes, I have some friends who do guardianship work. Trustees, I don't think so, but it's not against the law. But a Rogers guardian shouldn't be serving. I think there's some ethical issues there.
Okay. Bonnie, you got a question?
Yes, this is about gifting and not designating what the gift should go toward, but also considering the 5-year look back. So just wondering, I have thought about this before, and that if the money was used toward Roth IRAs, that I think there is not a penalty if you take it out. And so that would be a way to try to bless children, but the money would be available in the event of a look back. Perhaps if it was written out with that condition. I don't know. Just a thought.
Well, first of all, Roth IRAs, there's no penalty so long as it's been in for 5 years. Okay? But even after the 5-year period, if you take money out of the Roth and give it away, that ticks a new 5-year clock standing. Now, there are certain circumstances. If you're 50 years old and perfectly healthy, and you give away $15,000, and 6 months later you have a stroke, we've been able to explain that to Mass Health because you gave it away for a purpose exclusively other than to qualify for Mass Health. However, if you're 95 years old, you have AFib, you have congestive heart failure, and you're diabetic, and you start giving away your money, we have a pretty good idea you're doing it to avoid Mass Health. So every circumstance is a little different.
Yeah, I'm a fan of generally not touching your Roth IRA for a long period of time. And I just see,
yes,
I just
I'm
see a
just-
lot of elderly people that I do planning with that are in much lower tax brackets than they ever imagined. And so I'm planning around, okay, let's get some of this money out of your IRA more than the required minimum distribution. Because otherwise your kids are going to have this tax problem because their kids will have to take it out over 10 years now with the new tax law changes. Your children will have to take will take the IRA out over 10 years. Now, some people have said, well, we'll just take it all out in 10 years. Well, the IRS has kind of come out and said, that's not really what we intended when we said you have 10 years. So, yes, you can take it from the Roth. Everything Jim said is correct as far as look-backs and the 5-year rule. But that's tax-free money. Why not let it grow longer? That's just my opinion on it.
I was just thinking, if it were a gift to your children, it would be a way to help them save toward retirement, but there would be a way within the 5 years, if it was needed, for them to give it back, so to speak, for the 5-year look-back period.
Like gifting to them to put into their own Roth.
Right. Correct.
Yeah, so it's certainly a lot of different situations. And again, I purposely didn't want to delve too far into the look back and what that is and that kind of thing, because I think it's a
That's a whole seminar.
It's a whole, exactly. Exactly. So I know we're at about 11:30 now, so I'm going to ask a couple more questions, and we'll ask if there's more questions from the audience. So Jim, while you have the microphone, and we touched on this, talking about, selecting the right executor and trustee for an estate, and what are their responsibilities, and that's an important part of this planning as well. Can you give some advice about that?
I have some personal issues with any professional serving as a fiduciary for the average person. Now, if you're Jeff Bezos, you're going to have a professional serve. If you're Warren Buffett, you're going to have a professional serve. But for the average person, have a child serve. If you don't want one child to serve, have 2 children serve. If it's a second marriage, 1 child from marriage A, 1 child from marriage B. 1 child from the spouse A, 1 child from spouse B. The reason I don't like, and I have plenty of friends that are lawyers that serve as trustees, but they get to bill out at the professional rate. The average trustee gets to bill out at somewhere between $25 and $50 an hour. If you choose a professional from a professional trustee firm, they get a percentage of the estate every year. So I'm not big on that. A lot of people come to my office and say, we have no idea who we're going to appoint. We have no children. And I say, well, what about nieces, nephews, cousins? And they don't want to do that because they don't know them that well. Well, you don't know the professional that well either. So 2 people, it's very difficult to get 2 people to agree on anything, let alone something nefarious. So if you have 2 people, require 2 signatures, and that way it's a check and balance. And I think that should be everything from trustee, executor of the estate, durable power of attorney. Those are the money positions. Healthcare proxies in Massachusetts, you can only have 1 person serve at a time. You can't have 2. Never, ever make a doctor your healthcare proxy. First of all, there's an ethical problem with that. Secondly, most of them refuse to serve, but I do know a couple that have served. I don't believe in it. We give everybody what's called a medical directive that lists out a set of conditions. So if you have someone that you're not as familiar with, or that if you have a child that you don't like talking to, a child doesn't like talking to you about what happens if you're in a coma or a persistent vegetative state, you can actually list out what you do and do not want. Do you want an organ transplant? Do you want blood transfusions? Do you want tubes in your body? All those sort of things. They all have to be talked about, discussed, and if they're not, written down somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to comment
Yes,
a little
please.
bit about the 2 trustees. I prefer 1 trustee because I have a lot of scary stories of children that couldn't get along and couldn't come to a decision, or one was grieving, not ready to deal with it, where there was 4 children, the oldest sibling, youngest sibling, and the youngest was not ready to just do the paperwork, sign things, and the other 2 were just hanging out there waiting for a distribution. So I think having 2 to get 2 signatures so that one's confirming the other is good, but at the same time, the issue I've run into with multiple people is it's all well and good when someone's alive and you believe you told your kids your wishes, but then when you pass away, one sister is blocking everything from happening, saying, well, mom really wanted this to occur, so I'm not going to sign that. You know, and that's what is difficult a lot of times, where you think this is how it's going to work. So I tend to be more of a fan of single trustee, that of someone that you can count on, because there can be just some weird things that happen that occur where it drags out much longer than expected because of a second trustee. Also, just not wanting to do it. You know, that's the kind of the problem too, is like, they're like, yeah, okay, we'll do it for checks and balances, but then second trustee's like, I can't be bothered right now. I got my kids and I have this and work is crazy, so I'll get to it at some point. So I think you also have to be careful of capacity if you're going to choose a trustee or a second trustee.
Well, just to piggyback on that, it's all about communication. And communication early. I think that's the theme that we're trying to get across as well, is early communication with families about what, number one, what your wishes are, and you know, who's going to be available, and like you said, who has the capacity, who has the willingness, and the commitment, and getting that fleshed out, kind of thing. So Casey, while you have the microphone, I'm going to ask one last question here, then we'll go to the audience. So let's talk a little bit about how often you should have a checkup and planning. With my doctor, I have a checkup once a year. It's never the doctor I see though. But anyway, how often should this be updated and checked in your plan, check in?
So on the estate plan side, our opinion is 5 years, unless something's changed. There's been a law change, or someone got divorced, or someone passed away. We tend to say minimum 5 years to look at an estate plan to make sure everything is kosher. We do financial plans annually, so that's part of our review. But estate planning, we typically say every 5 years, unless there's been a material change, like your son got divorced, or your spouse passed away, or there's been a material thing that Jim would communicate to you saying, hey, guess what, this is now 2 million versus 1 million, we should take a look at this. So.
Okay, Jim?
Well, we give free meetings every 3 years just to review. We find changes happen every 9 to 12 years. They're usually good. You know, sometimes babies are born, grandchildren are born. You want to make an exception for them, leave a gift to them. Sometimes tragedies happened. Children pass away. Children get in car accidents. Children get divorced. So we like to see you every 3 years. Now, do my clients come in every 3 years? No. However, the ones where the plans tend to work flawlessly are the ones that stay on top of it. The ones that call me, the ones that come in for every 3 years for the review meetings, because something may happen, and again, if we have time, I'll tell you a very good war story. Something may happen and you may not even think about calling me. But if you had called us, we would have advised you differently. So we do it every 3 years, and we encourage phone calls.
Any advice, Ron?
I'd say be proactive. Your doctor doesn't typically call you up and say, hey, it's been a while since I've seen you. Why don't you come in, right? So we're professionals, so you should reach out to us, and don't assume you're bothering us. That's our job. Are we busy? Yes, we're busy, but we're busy because we're serving our clients. So, let your professional serve you and help you rather than, make a mistake, and we wish you had called us.
Yeah.
And if I could do one more comment on that. I tend to see folks the most out of versus Jim. So if you have an advisor, make sure they know your estate plan, because we tend to talk to you every couple of months, and you might tell us that you have a new grandchild, or this happened, that happened, and make sure they know your attorney so they can communicate it, because you might tell me, but you don't tell him. And you don't do the 3 year, the 4 year, whatever it is. So make sure that your advisor knows your estate plan, and make sure they know the attorney so that there can be communication, because they should work together, not separately. Okay?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to grab this mic and give it to Kelly for any questions. But Jim, I'll let you tell the war story while Kelly's grabbing the mic here. Go ahead, tell it.
So I had a client call just yesterday. Parents came in about 10, 15 years ago, drafted an irrevocable trust for the home. The home is in Wayland. Home appreciated greatly. Father died 5 years ago. They never called us. Mother sold the house, and her accountant, not him, said, you owe $90,000 in capital gains. She doesn't. But they filed the tax return saying you owed $90,000 in capital gains. She didn't have $90,000 in liquid assets. I don't know what happened from the sale of the house, but she didn't have it. So now the IRS is starting to chase her. So she calls up her financial planner, not him. And her financial planner says it's very easy. Just go into the trust and take the money out of the trust and pay the $90,000. So she's about to do that, and I say, no, don't do that. You're going to blow the whole trust up. She did it anyways.
Ooh.
So you can see where these things mushroom out of control. She didn't owe $90,000 in capital gains. She owed a little bit of capital gains, but not much, because she got a half step up when husband died. And she's entitled to a $250,000 exclusion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Accountant never mentioned that to her.
Mm.
So we don't know how much she would have been, but it's not $90,000. And then the financial guy, who's just trying to be a good person, says, well, just dip into that money that you have from the irrevocable trust and pay the $90,000 off so you don't owe interest and penalties to the IRS.
Yeah.
Well, that just blows up the trust.
Mm-hmm.
So everything they worked for over the years is gone.
Mm.
Now we have to file an amended tax return. And I don't know enough about income taxes. Maybe you can help. But I think amended tax returns, when you said, I owe you $90,000, here's $90,000, oh, I made a mistake, I want it back, might draw a little bit extra scrutiny from the taxing authorities. Maybe you could say something.
Probably. But you'd be surprised. Sometimes I think things are an automatic audit, and I think, is anyone paying attention down there? Right. So it's hard to know. But it's certainly not something you want to do. And so now, exactly, there'll be agents looking at it, and they'll be looking to say, well, do we have to give them the 90 grand? You know, they don't want to hand you the money. If you're due the money, sure, but
Right.
so.
Right. Okay.
But that goes back to my communication thing, right? Don't hesitate to communicate with all of your professionals if you have things going on. Let them all know.
Yes, excellent. Well, great. Michelle, you have a question.
I think it's a quick question, and I believe it's directed towards Casey. We've all been talking about the scenario dying or going to a nursing home. If you are aging solo, you don't have any heirs, what's the best way to plan for using the streams you're talking about as income? Would it be interest on something? Would it be a withdrawing from a life insurance policy? I meant, do you know what I'm saying without saying it? Okay.
I can read into it. It's really just going to depend on what you have. So if it's more retirement versus non-retirement, when you're going to take Social Security is important, or if you have a pension. It was mentioned earlier how he says that he was saying, like, take more from your retirement account sometimes to reduce tax burden. We tend to advise that, taking Social Security late and taking from your retirement account. It sounds counterintuitive to pay taxes when you don't have to, but at the same time, having your income be higher through Social Security could be a lot bigger benefit than just some sort of taxes you pay now. And then it's less you have to take out down the road. From more of a specific standpoint, it's really going to matter on what sort of risk you're comfortable taking, how much income you might need. There's, of course, like things like annuities, dividends, stocks, bonds, CDs. Rate environment's pretty good right now, but it's not going to stay that way forever. And then just determining what the amount is that you need to spend and what things are producing. Then we can design something to fill the gap. That's really the goal. So if you have an advisor, that's what you would want to sit down and talk about is what am I missing from income that's going to come in versus my spend? And then you can determine how you can come up with instruments to close the gap and how long you might need to have them, et cetera. And then factor in Social Security or retirement income. Okay.
What's your favorite product if you had to pick one?
Well, IRA is not a product, in my opinion. IRA is an umbrella. Inside it can be stocks, bonds, annuities, etc. I am traditional, stock and bond kind of income portfolio. I think annuities have their place, but it really depends. Depends on someone's risk, because some annuities are expensive, have a lot of risk. Some annuities have no risk, are really low expenses. But that gap that you identify, an annuity could fill the gap without any more questions after that. If you need $2,000 a month and you can say this annuity company is going to give us $2,000 a month for this amount of money, case closed. But you have to be willing to give up growth or something like that too. So I'm more traditional, that I feel like the market can provide typically, even though it's volatile. There's still something to the Dow being 39,000. 2008 it was 2007 it was 14,000, went down to 6,000, now it's 39, but it still has a place, you know, for, especially if you're going to live up to 90, 95, you still need to have something to fight inflation over that period of time.
Okay. Excellent.
I have a question or a point that I want to bring up. A lot of times when we're working with clients, they're rummaging through paperwork boxes under the bed, closets, trying to find the insurance policy, trying to figure out who is their CPA, who is their financial advisor. So one of the things we have done seminars on and we're working with people on is putting together a binder, at least having those folks who are your professionals' name, phone number, email, so that someone who is handling your estate that may not have all the details, even though if it should be well planned out, but if it's not, they at least know who to talk to. So some of these scenarios that these gentlemen are talking about may not happen, where someone's advising you one way, someone else is saying something else. So that's really important to have it written down somewhere and to tell somebody or a couple of people where that binder or where that information is, so they know where to start.
So Ron brought this in
Perfect.
Today, and it's a book. It's called I'm Dead, Now What?
Perfect. Yes.
It's tongue in cheek.
Guess what? My wife got that. 100% true. And not even that long ago. It was like 2 months ago. It was on the counter. My 29-year-old daughter came home, looked at it, and goes, "Mom, what's that? That's creepy." Well, being the CPA, I do a lot of the finances in the house, and she really doesn't have an idea about different accounts. And so I can tell you from experience, I was a trustee of my uncle's estate in Ohio, and didn't see him much, but you know, we were always close when he visited. But I had no idea, none whatsoever, what he had for accounts. And I was rifling through tax returns and records, and it's just a really unsettling feeling being a trustee, wondering if you're missing like an account somewhere. And so I'm sure you probably have a few horror stories about that too. So if if you put it down somewhere, what your assets are, what your accounts are, where things are at, who your attorneys are, who your estate planning attorney, the accountant, then it's there. And then your kids can go looking for it. Doesn't have to be that book. It can be anything. There's a bunch of products out there, I'm guessing.
There's a few out there. There's one Kelly and I are using. It's called Get It Together. It's a binder. It's a system. It's PDF fillable forms that you can print out and then update it on a regular basis as well. So the hard work is to getting everything all written down first, and then updating it.
Yeah, because I have at most every week I think, what is my password for this account? And I'm constantly forget my password, changing it, writing it down, and then I write it down, and then I sign in again, and I'm like, it's not working. So I know just for those little things how frustrating and overwhelming it is. So these books are invaluable because there's no way you can remember all of it, and it's a nice place to start.
Right.
If I could just comment once on that too. That's the benefit of doing an estate plan, is that you do that balance sheet of everything that exists. So all of a sudden you do get to find everything out, and then he'll set up some sort of roll call of everything, where it is, what it is, and typically who the contact is. We have our own book through our firm too, but that's the benefit of doing an estate plan in the first place, is there's that rundown of everything that exists, because the attorney's going to say, tell me everything that your name is on. And they record it, and then that's going to determine how he plans to.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I had one other that I was just thinking, in the event that somebody dies unexpectedly or maybe doesn't have a family member, is there any kind of a database to find out where their will might be if they had one? Is there a way that somebody could contact attorneys to say, does anyone have a will for him or her?
Thanks.
No. Now, if their attorney has died or retired or something like that, they are supposed to contact the Board of Bar Overseers and say, I'm going to store my files here. However, everybody in the audience should have their originals. You should not have a copy. The attorney's keeping the original in his or her office, go get it from them. Because people pass away, people retire, you want your original documents. Absolutely, positively, you want your originals.
Okay. Here you go.
What is an fireproof box?
So
Say that again.
There's really no such thing as a fireproof box. There are fire-resistant boxes. And the problem with that is, if you run out of your house because it's on fire, and the fire department comes to put that out, you're going to open it up and you're going to have charred ashes in the box because it's fire-resistant, and the firemen aren't going to be looking for that box. They're going to be looking for, first of all, people, and secondly, pets. And fireproof boxes, no such thing. Fire-resistant box. You can go to Staples, any of the stores, and look and it'll say fire-resistant up to so many degrees for so many hours.
Yeah.
So
Yes, if it burns to the ground. We can
I would
have-
just make sure you have the originals, and then make sure that you have your attorney or your financial person, somebody has a copy. Massachusetts now accepts copies of wills.
Okay.
But your originals just burnt down in the house.
So if you have somebody have the copies.
The copy is.
Massachusetts now accepts copies.
So we do personally.
Some places don't, believe it or not, because I am a trustee, and in trying to pull all of the pieces together, there were some people that were fine with my copies. Everything was done by an attorney such as yourself. I had to.
such as myself.
And there were people that I would not accept copies. Isn't that crazy?
So did it say a copy is just as good as an original? Because if it did, here's the problem.
I don't know.
I use Santander Bank. Anybody here bank with Santander? Okay, good. They're the toughest people to deal with. Everything we write says a copy's as good as the original. There's a new durable power of attorney law, well, now it goes back to 2012, but it says they never expire. Ever. Santander refuses to take them if they're like 10 years old. We're not going to spend $30,000 taking Santander to court. So what we're going to do is we're going to threaten to go to the Attorney General and have the Attorney General take them to court. Then when it gets up to their legal counsel, they have to take it. But the person that you're dealing with is just opening up their operations manual and saying, oh, geez, no, we can't. So if the trust says, or if the paperwork says a copy's as good as the original, they have to take it.
Casey, you had a point you wanted to...
You can also store it digitally. So our clients have access to a digital vault where they can scan into all the documents they have. So it's still going to be a copy, but at least, again, if the safe doesn't pan out or you can't get into your safe box or no one can, we use a digital vault through our website that's secure. People store all types of documents there. So that's part of our company that they offer.
Good. So we're just about wrapping up time here, so just want to tell you about our next seminar coming up in June. Wow, it's already June. Holy mackerel. Home health, hospice, and in-home care will have another panel next month as well. And then July, safeguarding senior homeowner strategies to prevent scams and financial exploitation. That seems to be more and more. Absolutely. Yeah. Some of that too. Yeah, we'll talk about all that.
Grandson's in jail.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So please give these gentlemen a round of applause.
town, they have